Greetings everyone, welcome to this new build guide. We are going to take a look at the Necromancer Golem build. And the reason why we're using Necromancer and not the Elementalist, there's a bunch of reasons, but basically it's because I wanted to use all the auras and I want to have that extra defense, because the Necromancer is truly broken when it comes to defensive layers. We are getting close to Immortal, and if I was not in a private league, I could make this build truly Immortal, I think. And yeah, I take the Shaper Slam, I stood in the beams of Cyrus and everything like that. And also, you're gonna have 10 auras, so your friends are gonna really love to play with you, because you're gonna have so many auras that is buffing them and buffing the whole party. So everyone gets Immortal, which is really good. And you're doing 20 million DPS, even on the lower end. So if you really want to invest in this, which I would have done if I was not in the private league, then yeah, you would have gotten so much more DPS. But you really don't need to. You don't need more than 10 million DPS in this game, basically, because everything is just gonna die instantly anyway. So with that said, we are gonna move into the guide, and hopefully you have the currency to actually follow what I'm giving you advice to buy here. Well, I'm gonna give you budget options also, so don't worry about that. Let's get into it. Let's start talking about the gear. Basically every single piece in this build is a unique item, which is very good or very bad depending how you see it, if you have a lot of currency. Some of these are very inexpensive, some of them are a little bit on the pricey side because of a meta build. It's always a little bit more pricey, but some of them are just 1 chaos or something like that. And it makes it a lot easier to gear because you always know what to aim for next. I'm gonna give you a few options here or on some of the pieces, and some of them you cannot interchange for anything. You need that piece. So with that said, let's start with the only piece we're not having as a unique. It's our gloves. I'm using these to just fill in my stats and obviously get as much energy shield as possible. Dexterity and strength is going to be a little bit of a problem, but they are a passive point away just on the tree if you want those 30 plus to dexterity or strength node. So there's always an option if you want to waste one passive, which I did in the beginning until I crafted these. The rest is the Clay Shaper, for example, is just 1 chaos or even less. And this gives us 1 extra golem and some added physical attack damage to our minions, which is really nice. And because it's 1 extra golem, that makes, depending on what kind of gear you have, it's 3, 4, 5 extra million to your DPS overall, because your golems do a lot of damage. So I would not interchange this, but I know some other people are using Cold Iron Point, the dagger, to make this and to buff everything with +3 to levels. Next one, we're using the Vertex. I know some people are using the rare helmet with -2 mana reservation on it, 5% I believe it is. That works also, but again, you're gonna need to craft it, and then it's gonna cost much more. And at this point of time, the Vertex is a really inexpensive option, and it gives us chaos resistance. We want to fill up those chaos resistance to the maximum if we can in this build. And this also buffs our minion. We want to buff our minion like Animated Guardian, because that one has a lot of expensive gear on it that we do not want to lose. For our Animated Guardian, I will just link a guide in the description, and basically a build guide for this. I made some adjustments, as you might see from that build guide, but this is a very popular build guide on the forum. So if you want to take a look what kind of gear you want for Animated Guardian, just take a look at that one. It's probably better than whatever description I can make. For our chest piece, we're gonna use Shavron's Wrapping. We can also use Solaris Lorica if you want some inexpensive option here to just start off with. This I started off with the Solaris one just because I didn't have a 6-linked one, this one. So it basically does the same thing as our Shavron's Wrapping. It lets us use our life and mana at the same time as reservation, because chaos damage does not bypass energy shield. This is the mod we want. but the chevrons gives us that 350 plus energy shield on top of it, so that is very nice for us to have, because obviously a little bit extra energy shield will boost us. Next one is Presence of Shayula. We're getting some really good stats here. Chaos resistance, again, this is almost mandatory for any low life build like we're playing. We cannot be stunned, because we're gonna get stunned all the time otherwise, because we have almost no life. And maximum life convert to energy shield, make sure you upgrade it. As you can see, it says 20% at the top of this. That basically means that I'm boosting the maximum life convert to energy shield to get some extra out of it. You can do the life or the defense modifier, it doesn't matter which one. I'm allocating charisma here also as a stat. That means I'm getting extra -2 mana reservation, which is of course with 10 auras, it's kind of mandatory if you're gonna need that. It's 2 gold and 1 pearlescent, I believe it is, and yeah, so it's a little bit pricey, but with all the rest, it's a drop in the bucket, I would say. For our rings, which are super expensive right now, obviously meta builds are expensive, so you're gonna need to you can use unset rings here. I've seen people use unset rings with plus, because unset ring can roll them up +2 levels and +3 to levels, I believe is the highest. And if you have that, because we want to boost our purity of fire and boost our discipline, especially purity of fire, because that means we're gonna get that extra maximum resistance, which is what we're stacking to get the 90% max res on this build. Obviously these are much better, because regenerate 15 life per second for each uncorrupted item, and that is ×2 and minus cost, and I mean, these are just king, of course, but a good unset ring can be almost as good or even better, might be, with some good mods. Our shield we cannot interchange with anything. It's, of course, we have the blood magic, because we want to reserve our auras here, our Pure Device, Haste and Pride from our life pool instead of our mana pool. And also it reduced the mana reservation. And I also corrupted, it's not a very expensive item, but I'm also having the corrupt and physical damage hits taken as fire damage, because our physical damage need to be mitigated to make it feel as good as the 90% elemental damage mitigated. So just to make it on an equal playing field. Also, our Taste of Hate helps a lot here. For our belt, also inexpensive, is Darkness Enthroned. It's just to boost our jewels here, or our abyss jewels, yeah. And mine are not very good, which we'll be talking about in the jewels section later on. But I don't think, with really good ones, there's nothing better than this belt. It got buffed in last league also, so really nice there. For our boots, there's basically 2 options. I went with this one because I wanted the Purity of Lightning skill on the boots directly, and it will buff it to a level, so I will get extra maximum resistance. You can run a map and get them every time. Just search on these and how to get them. They're a little bit expensive, but I think they're much cheaper in this league than they were in previous leagues, because in previous league these were super expensive. Otherwise, I use these for most of the game, and these are perfectly viable if you're fine with just having 1 less maximum resistance, which is basically not needed. It's just that I'm pedantic, and I wanted to be able to say to you all that I have my 90% max resistances on all of the stats, so it's mostly for myself. These work fine. This is what most people are using. Honestly, it gives a little bit more defense all the way and helps you with the stats and everything. It's harder to build around these than it is to just use these boots, so this is probably a better option than all over. So those were all my gear pieces. Like I said, there are some budget options, some interchangeable options, and you're probably gonna need to interchange these 2 at the beginning at least, unless you're really rich. And yeah, let's go to the next section. For our flask, we're using Taste of Hate here for physical damage hits taken as cold damage during flask effect. Again, if we have 90% cold res on this build, that means we are gonna mitigate a lot of physical damage. Mandatory, I would say, not very expensive, I would not believe at this point. And also we're using Granite Flask again with the physical damage reduction. Really good here. And evasion rating, you can also use other flask here. I honestly might be better off to use another flask than the evasion base, but I just had it and I put the mods on it. It didn't really need it because we're so tanky anyway. And then we have a quartz flask for some extra dodge chance, and mostly for the phasing, because our minions are just running behind us and killing everything, so we can just run in full speed and they just kill, so we don't want to get hung up by any of the enemies. And finally we're using a Quicksilver flask, which gives us an extra movement speed. And of course on these we want the freeze, bleeding and curse immunity, because those are gonna be the big ones. You can also have, instead of curse, I guess you can have, or instead of freezing, you can have poison, but I didn't see the need for it, and these are the choices that I went for. Let's go to the next. Let's talk about my jewels, and it's gonna be in my belt. It's gonna be the first two ones. It's gonna be Abyss jewels, and I'm looking for specific stats here. I'm looking for maximum energy shield, of course, and I'm looking for any stats that I can have for dexterity or strength, mostly strength if I could get my hands on it, because it was my lowest one. And also looking for chance to blind enemies. Blinding is very strong stat, because we have so many minions, you're gonna blind sooner or later. Well, you're gonna basically blind directly as soon as one hit is getting applied, because you have so many minions hitting. So even with 5%, you're gonna be instantly blinding them. And taunt is very nice also. It keeps them off you, and also does less damage if they actually manage to hit you. So just an extra defensive layer that you don't need. But if you get your hands on something, these stats are not very good on mine. There are some better ones that boost damage, like 20% extra minion damage if you have used a minion skill recently, which is Convocation. You use it all the time. So you're gonna have that up all the time. Then we have some kind of mandatory jewels. It's going to be the primordial jewels. You have, first of all, the anima stones, which means that you're trading one of each other primordial jewel, and you get to the vendor, and that means you're going to get an anima stone out of it. The anima stone is going to give you one extra golem, and one extra golem on top of that if you're using 3 primordials. And I'm using 4 right now, so I'm overcapped on these actually. Then other primordials is going to be primordial harmony there, there's going to be primordial harmony there, and primordial eminence here. It's going to be attack speed and also bring down the cooldown recovery on the slams they do, the AoE attacks, which is very nice because it gives them so much more damage and so much clear. Honestly, this one I'm a little bit off on because it's the most expensive one of them all and the most rarest one. And I'm using it because summon golem are aggressive. All the other stats are useless basically. Or maybe the maximum life might be a little bit useful, but all the other stats are useless because we're not gonna activate them. But we have so much movement speed and stuff like that, so we might not actually need this one. And I interchange it on bosses with my Corrupted Blood, because just tips from a coach here is that Corrupted Blood is the killer of those beams. When he says die, Cyrus says die, and then you do the 3 beams. The things that killing you is most likely Corrupted Blood. So if you have a Corrupted Blood as a corruption on your jewel, that means you're gonna survive. So I interchange this on the Cyrus fight to just feel a little bit safer. They're actually doing, the beam is doing it's cold, or there's freezing, poison and Corrupted Blood, but Corrupted Blood is the most important there. Enough of that. Energy from within is going to convert some of these life that was on these to extra energy shield. That also gives a 5% flat energy shield also, which is very nice. And now for the most important and the most hardest part. I might do a video if there's enough views and enough traction on this. If people actually need the help, because certain jewels is gonna be needed here. We're gonna need to use a lot of cluster jewels. We're using a large cluster jewels here and here on both sides, and they're all 8 passive skills. That's so I'm just minimizing. If you have 9 or 10, it doesn't really matter if you're willing to spend extra points, because the points are kind of a good boost of extra damage anyway. So yeah, with that said, if you cannot afford the 8 one, then just craft on anything else. What we're looking for is these 2 mods is Renewal, which gives us double damage while they're full life. Our minions are always on full life because they have so much regen, which we'll be seeing here soon. Minions have chance to Impale, and we all know that Impale is super OP in this game for both Cyclone builds or any other build, and it's even truer for minion builds. So please use these Rotten Claws, and that means if you have both of these, you can also take out Impale support in your 6th link, which I've done also, which we'll talk about in the skill gem section. But now for the important part, which is going to be our medium cluster jewels. Increase effect of non-cursed auras from your skills. These are the important stats you want to start crafting on. I crafted all of these myself, by the way. Actually, I've crafted many of these myself to just get the exact rate stats, which you don't need, of course. I'm using the 6 passive one, and that's only because you're gonna need 6 passive on everything here. If you're aiming for to get 200% aura effect. Otherwise, you're not gonna get 200% aura effect, and you're not gonna reach that 90% max all res. It's not needed. It's very expensive to get up to that level, and it's not needed. But I'm a perfectionist. I just wanted to get to that level. And what else am I gonna use my currency for anyway? So what we're looking for on these is these 2 stats you can see here: replenishing presence and first among equals. These are really good because they give you increased effect of non-curse auras from your skills. Again, we need to reach that as high as possible because we have 10 auras. And with 10 auras, we are gonna be boosted by 200%, and that is a lot. That is a lot all around. That's a lot of damage, a lot of defense, a lot of movement speed, a lot of everything. And the second one, which is the most important one, I feel like, is also 8% only, but you and nearby allies regenerate 1% of life per second. That means both you and your minions, because we're converting life regeneration through Cell of Oath to energy shield. So we are gonna get a boost, and even more important, our minions are never gonna die. And we're using that on everything here, except I'm having one here, which is only viable. If you're having only 4 or 5 nodes, I would go for first among equals and replenishing presence on these. But if you have a 6 nodes, adds 6 passive skills, which I have on everyone, you can also go for the increased effect. So 25% increased effect mode with the replenishing presence or the first among equals, because it adds up to the same amount of effect of non-curse auras from your skills. So with 6 points, it adds up to the exact same amount in the end. So that means you have 3 mods that you can actually roll for, which might increase your odds, or yeah, by a little bit at least. Yeah, so that I think I covered everything I needed, and yeah, let's go to the next section. For our skill gems, we are gonna use for our main link is Summon Carrion Golem. Of course, you want level 21 here, which should not be that hard because there's a card that actually gives a random golem, which is 21, and a lot of people is dropping this card, and you are gonna be tons of these on the market. 20% is nice as quality because it gives you some extra life and extra damage, so that would obviously be a quite substantial boost to your golem. Again, not needed. Level is much more important than the extra quality. I'm using damage on full life instead of impale. Before I had impale right here, and it might be a little bit more damage on full life than the impale one, so you might want to think about that. Then we're using melee physical damage support, and we're using minion damage, multi-strike, and brutality here. I'm using the awakened one because it dropped, But there's also Awaken Multi-Strike. You can even Awaken Minion Damage. I don't know, is there any of these that are Awakened? But of course, you want to Awaken on everything you can get Awakened format on. That would boost your damage into the next hemisphere, especially if you have Awakened Multi-Strike. That one gets an extra strike from this. That is insane, much more damage. In our helmet, we're using Minion Life, Feeding Frenzy to buff our all our other minions here, and Animated Guardian and Raise Zombies. Before I used the Animated Guardian with expensive gear, I used Maim here because it's gonna boost every time our zombies are gonna put Maim on the enemies, and it's gonna boost the damage for our golems also quite substantially. Again, it's gonna give a lot of more damage. So if you don't have a lot of expensive gear for your Animated Guardian, I suggest you go with Maim here. And I'm using one of the special jewels here because it gives minions increased maximum life. So just to keep my Guardian, or actually is this an area of effect one? Yeah, it's one of those weird ones. I didn't have a 21 one, so this one I dropped, so I just wanted to try it out. I don't think it does anything, so don't worry about the special alternate quality ones here. But I know that you can have a Feeding Frenzy, which has a good alternate quality that gives leech for all your minions. And I know this one, Animated Guardian, can have one with maximum life also. So that one obviously is good because you do not want to kill your Animated Guardian. In my main hand, I'm using Generosity with Dread Banner and Precision. Not leveled up fully because otherwise we would not have enough mana. I'm just leveling up that one, the last thing I'm putting in. So I'm leveling up so I have enough mana exactly to activate. So you see here, mana cost 30, I have 31. So I can use all my skills. And Dread Banner, Impale effect and everything, I'm never putting it down. I don't even have a Dread Banner on my bar, so I'm not throwing it down on the ground myself. Then we can talk about this one is Purity of Ice. It's getting boosted by the levels of Circular Outer Gems, which means we are gonna get the levels we need to get that extra maximum cold resistance, which means we're getting up to that 90% if we have the 200% aura effect. And Haste and Pride. Pride is very good because of the Impale again, and Haste is just all around. And if you have Val Haste, you're gonna, as soon as you click this is like millions of extra DPS for your golems. They just go berserk and just hit everything in like ultra speed. In our rings, we're using Purity of Fire again to get that extra maximum resistance, and Discipline in the other one so we can get some extra energy shield from this out. If you don't have the shoes, you can put in the Purity of Lightning to get that extra maximum resistance, but I just would like to have extra energy shield instead. I just find that better. In our gloves, we're using Blood Magic, Vitality, and Ray Specters and Clarity. We're using our Blood Magic from our Ray Specters because our Ray Specters here is gonna be 2 Carnage Chieftains and 1 Host Chieftain, and you get them from Ashenfield. Is it, which act is it? Is 7, yeah? Yeah, Ashenfield 7. So you're gonna need to go there and kill or desecrate on the ground, and then just summon them from there. So 2 Carnage and 1 Hosted Chieftain. And that basically is going to give us frenzy charges and power charges to you and your minions. And if you do not have that on a Blood Magic, that means they're going to run out of mana real fast and they're not going to buff you through the maps. But if you have it on Blood Magic with all our regen, that means they're going to have infinite amount of times to throw that spell in the maps. So it needs to be on the Blood Magic. And then we have Clarity and Vitality, which obviously reserves some more mana here. Vitality is super nice because they changed this one, and it just gives us one more aura that we could actually fit in. And we're just using Clarity on a low level because any extra aura we have it's gonna boost our overall damage because of one of our ascendancies. And finally, in our boost, we're using some utility skills. We have Desecrate, so we can, on bosses, we can put in Desecrate and then use Flesh Offering, which is one of our, which is over there. So some extra damage boost on when there's no minions around or no corpses. Then we have Convocation to bring all our minions to our spot, which we use all the time. And Flame Dash just got up those pesky ledges. And those are all the jewels or all the skill gems. I would not change a single one. I've changed around all of these a lot, and I just very happy with these ones. Let's go to next. For the passive tree, we are gonna pick up as many energy shield nodes as we can on the way to our important parts, which is obviously our cluster jewels up here and up here. We are also gonna get a Ravenous Horde, which is very good to get in the start of the game, as it is quite a substantial, especially the onslaught there from your minion. It's quite a substantial thing. And if you're leveling with golems, a golem commander obviously is a good choice here. Also, if you pick up jewel sockets, that means you can put in your primordial jewels there and you can get going with some extra damage and speed and everything. We are also getting one extra Spectre here because we're gonna need that one, and some attack speed. There's good nodes on the way there, so don't worry about wasting points. I'm also picked up one extra there because I just wanted to be extra safe with my Animated Guardian, and that one node gives life regen on top of the increased maximum life. Then we're gonna basically travel down here. We're gonna pick up some reduced mana reservation, and we are also effect on non-curse hour from your skills. That's what we're scaling with this build. And Self Oath. Before I had all my jewels ready, I also picked up down here, I picked up this Righteous Army and Redemption. Those are really good ones also, so just 1 point, and then just pick up all of these if you have a little bit problem doing this, because you have plenty of damage and plenty of defense until then anyway. Then you have maximum lightning resistance, which we don't really need right now because we have 90 anyway, which is maximum, but it's we get the maximum energy shield on top of that, and it's the most efficient nodes for those points anyway. And again, we want the aura effect, and we want extra strength and extra, because all our maximum life is also converted through our Shoyula, presence of Shoyula, so these nodes are very good to just boost some extra. But these ones I would take last if there's anything you don't have the points for. Same with these are just filler nodes when you're just having more levels. And these are obviously obligatory because anything with reduced mana reservation or effective non-curse auras are obligatory. And if you have the energy from within jewel, then of course these are really good nodes because they gives a lot of extra maximum energy shield. And that's basically it. There's not much to it. It's basically just getting enough points for your cluster jewels and get to those areas and just pick up some points on the way. Let's go to the next. For our ascendancies, we are gonna go with Mindless Aggression first, and it's just a filler one so we can get to the next one, which is the more important one, Unnatural Strength. 2 levels to minion skill gems. I cannot tell you how much damage this one node is by itself, and it's just gonna boost all around. It's just gonna get your minions up to a whole nother level in both survivability and damage. So it's rush for this one. The third one, we're gonna go with Commander of Darkness. This one is key for our build here. This is why we're taking Necromancer. Auras from your skill grant 3% increased attack and cost, speed on your allies. You and nearby allies deal increased damage, and the aura thing there is for every aura. That means yeah, that means we are gonna have 10 auras activated, and that's just gonna be a ton extra aura effect or attack speed and cost speed, so obviously very nice. I almost forgot, there's one more, Bone Barrier. Bone Barrier I have on my left click here. As you can see, that means every time I'm moving around, this is gonna activate by itself. It's not gonna hinder me or stop me because it's an instant cost. So this one I can just completely forget about and just have there, which is very nice. It may also buff also grants immunity to bleeding, so technically I could maybe drop my bleeding flask, but I'm a little bit afraid to do so. I've not tried doing that. So you can basically remove this one, because this one is going to be up very often. And then you have some physical damage reduction, and because we have the 10 minions around us, increased life recovery rate, and means they have more maximum life. So very nice for our Uber lab. So those are the ascendancies. Let's go to the next. For our Pantheons, we are going to use Soul of Lunaris when we're mapping or basically doing any content, and we're going to use Soul of Gurukun for the extra movement speed and of course some extra evasion. But basically here, movement speed, just go as fast as possible, some extra additional physical damage reduction when we're going to swamp by a lot of enemies. And for difficult bosses like Cyrus, you might want to go and take Soul of Solaris instead, because there's only one nearby enemies. So this one will help you, and all his attacks are also area attacks, so chance to take 50% less area damage from hits, which is very nice. Just something to think about, and I think that's basically it. If you're not using freeze immunity or afraid of that, you can reflect the enemy's shields and freezes here also, if you want to switch that for Cyrus fight or Uber Elder or any of those fights that have a really high chance of freezing you or shield you. Let's go to the next. For our bandits, we are gonna kill them all, because getting those 2 passive points for our build is key here. We do not benefit from anything else, so there's no other option, so kill them all. And there we have it. Thank you everyone for staying this long, and if something didn't make sense in this build guide, please leave a comment below and I will try to get back to you as fast as I can. You can help me support my channel by putting a like on this video and subscribe to my channel. I hope you all have an awesome day, everyone.